On today's Locked On NBA Game Night, who actually has a chance to win the championship? Is it less teams than you think? Find out next.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are locked on to NBA Game Night. My name is Gavin, Schall, host of the Locked On Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thank you for being an everydayer and making Locked On NBA your first listen every single day. And joining me today is Swipa, the co-host of the Locked On Nuggets podcast, as we fill in for your typical Wednesday hosts, Wes Goldberg and Tony East, who's getting married today. Shout out to Tony. Swipa, I know you just got back from the Bay. How'd you enjoy your All-Star weekend?
I'm not going to lie, bro. It was a whirlwind. It's going to take about a week to really unpack all the stuff that happened. But shout out to the media, the NBA. The media events were amazing. The events that happened around the city, San Francisco really stepped it up. Warriors fans should be very proud of how well your organization did and making sure everybody was taken care of, from the athletes to the celebrities to entertainers to media to the fans to kids. There are so many events like the crossover and all that. Honestly, Gavin, it was for my first All-Star game. I don't know how much better it could have gone with all the people that I got a chance to meet, and then even just obviously the game day activities and stuff as well. So 10 of 10 all the way down around the room for production for the NBA.
Well, congratulations. That sounds awesome. I've never gone. I would love to one day. I know from afar people were critical, but everything I've heard from people on the ground was that it was a lot of fun. But that is in the past. The present is that this show is called Game Night. There are no games tonight, so we thought it'd be a good time to zoom out and draft contenders. Basically, we'll take turns drafting in order the teams we think are most likely to win an NBA championship this year. You get the first pick, buddy, because I'm a good host. Who do you have first?
Oh, I'm taking OKC. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'm putting my chips in with OKC 100%. I'm not putting all of them in, but largest piece of that pie. Yeah, give me OKC, please.
All right, so let's talk this through, because my first pick would have been the Boston Celtics, and it would have been. It is not, considering that Oklahoma City is on an absolutely historic pace this year. It is not all that close in my mind. But make the case. Why Oklahoma City?
So here's the thing. I think one of the reasons that people are so hesitant is very similar to the 2023 Nuggets and the 24 Celtics. Everybody's watching these teams go on these great regular season runs, especially the Celtics and Thunder this year. And they're like, nah, but they fell apart in the playoff in the second round last year. OKC did. They didn't. They don't have the shooting on the roster. You know, you look at the effective field goal percentage for the team. They're not scoring at the rate and finishing plays at the rate that you would like for other all-time great teams or championship level teams. And I understand that. But I think the same thing I thought when the Nuggets went on and won a title. They were dominating everyone. And then eventually by March 1st, the Nuggets were 7 games up in the Western Conference, and they literally just walked the rest of the season. And they were 16-4 in the playoffs. Last year, the Boston Celtics, they had one of the best point differentials in NBA history. They were a dominant offense, dominant defense. They were playing Jalen Brown, JT, and others, some of the best basketball of their career. KP was going crazy. And then they went 16-3 in the NBA playoff. Now, granted, like, there's always injuries and stuff that affect that, but I just think people are slow on teams that haven't done it before. And I think OKC is just a new version of that. And I would say that if we just did a blind reveal for, like, here are the players on the team, you got a top-end MVP candidate that probably is going to win the MVP award this year. You got maybe the second or third best defense and adjusted defensive net rating across the last 40 years in the OKC Thunder. And then on top of that, they got Chet's back, Isaiah Hartenstein. You got Lou Dort, J-Dub, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe, and you got Wiggins. I think that if we just did a blind reveal, it wouldn't really be that close.
So I kind of feel like you're my basketball therapist right now, and you know me better than I know myself, because that is exactly my opinion on both Oklahoma City and Cleveland, where it's like I've seen it with the Celtics, and I've seen it in the very recent past with the Celtics. Haven't seen it with Oklahoma City. Haven't seen it with Cleveland. I know Oklahoma City in particular is different this year, given Hartenstein, given Caruso, given those younger guys all being a year older, SGA playing the best basketball of his career. And you look to that net rating, to your point, right? Plus 13 on the season. That is the second best in the history of the NBA behind the 1996 Bulls. To your point, you have to take into account that it'll probably go down end of the season. They'll be resting some guys. It is still an extraordinary number that's made even more extraordinary by the fact that they've done it missing arguably their best player in Chet Holmgren, something like 75% of the season. Like it doesn't really make sense how incredibly dominant they've been. The offense has been a lot better the last like 10 to 15 games. And it's not even Chet coming back because he's only played, I think, 3 or 4 heading into the All-Star break. It's more so Aaron Wiggins finding his rhythm and having, I mean, he had a 40 and 17 game. Like he's been going off. SGA has played the best basketball or like has had the best stretch of his career where he had those 350-point games in like 13 games or so. I think my only question compared to Boston, I'm curious your take on it. I wonder like, is there an obvious answer if SGA is, and maybe this just won't happen because it hasn't really happened in the regular season, but if he's having an off game, if a team figures out a style of defense to bottle him up a little bit, like, or just simply when he's off the floor, who are you confident come, I'm not even talking first 2 rounds, I'm talking conference finals, NBA finals. Are you confident that Jalen Williams in his third season, I believe, is he ready for that? Is Chet coming off like nominally his 3rd season, but really he's only going to play a year and a half of basketball by the time of the conference finals, by the time of the NBA finals. Is he ready for that? And it's why I was kind of curious. They didn't go and get someone who's just an experienced scorer. Early season, I was arguing for someone like Norm Powell. He's probably just been too good for that to have been feasible, but they had so many draft picks, so much flexibility. I'm almost surprised they didn't try to find that, but clearly they're confident in what they have in-house. What makes you confident that that guy will be there?
Man, look, so here's where we are. So they right now, if you just look at their roster, so I'm looking at J-Dub, Chet, Wiggs, Isaiah Joe. I think you're looking at a situation where they're going to be like trying to find ways to configure offense, which is real. They're the worst team. They're the worst offense in the NBA with SGA not on the court. But their defense is going to be like hellacious. And so that's one of the things that's going to carry them is they're in a situation now where you're just looking at them and saying, can you sustain enough high-level defense while SGA is not on the court for you to be able to score enough points? And then when you get SGA back in the game, because of his general gravity as a pull-up shooter and as a driver, you're going to have to make a decision. We're going to collapse, and you're going to basically throw the ball out to some really good three-point shooters, or you're going to force your defense basically to bend and say, we're just going to go one-on-one all night. And maybe SGA will miss that night. But here's the thing. I will say this, Gavin. I think one of the reasons why like I'm picking OKC is that I think OKC has clear flaws. They have clear offensive flaws. But I think everybody else after them has even more flaws or not as high of a ceiling because of the defense.
I hear you on that. I don't believe that to be true about the Boston Celtics. I think they are a perfectly built basketball team. They have 5 guys who, at minimum, are very good offensive players, at minimum, very good defensive players. And I don't know, like maybe that is too simplistic of an analysis, but I just feel like you can't say that about any other team in the NBA, including the Oklahoma City Thunder, where Lou Dort obviously can shoot the basketball. He is not by any means in the regular season a liability. Is he hitting those threes in the NBA Finals? Isaiah Hartenstein is like one of the best screeners in the league, one of the best offensive rebounders in the league, has that flip shot that is on automatic. Like he hasn't played on that stage. Even SGA, who I really don't have doubts about, but we saw LeBron really struggle in his first finals. We saw Jayson Tatum really struggle in his first finals. Like it is a rite of passage. I mean, Luka Doncic a year ago, it is a rite of passage, even for some of the greatest players in the history of the game, to struggle during that first run to the finals. Is he ready for that in the regular season? Even in the playoffs last year, it seemed like he had every single answer to the test, right? He saw every defense, like, and particularly like when Chet was out, like he was constantly seeing 2 guys. I remember the Knicks game throwing Mikal at him, throwing OG Anunoby at him, and it just hasn't mattered. He's always had the answers, but I'm curious, like, if on that stage he can do what your guy Nikola Jokic did and like not look out of place by any means in his first NBA Finals, even if it's against a defense as good as the Celtics.
Well, I think the thing is the Celtics, their flaw is they take the second least amount of their shot profile at the rim in the NBA. We've already seen that if you stall out their offense by forcing them to take contested threes, then you could actually go on runs versus the Celtics where they can't score. And then on the other end, if you can invert them defensively and take advantage of the fact they don't have the best rim protection in the league, you can also score on them as well. But again, this is not to say the Celtics should not be like or first or second favorites for the title. I think that if you're just talking FanDuel, I think that it's completely fair to have them at 2 based on their pedigree and what they've done. I just think that there are some clear matchups they could run into in the playoff that could cause them real issues, but also too, so can OKC. Everything in this NBA playoff run, based on how good the teams are in the NBA, is going to come down to matchups. If you have a favorable matchup, you can win the title. If you don't, you could be out in the first round.
All right, so I actually think Boston has a pretty favorable path. How about we debate that next on Locked On NBA Game Night? But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Prize Picks. Football season may be over, but the basketball action is just heating up. And there's no better way to get on the excitement than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. It's simple. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you control the action all season long. This week, I'm looking at, speaking of the Boston Celtics, Jayson Tatum to score more than 29 points when the Celtics are back in action on Friday. I'm looking for my guy Jalen Brunson on Thursday night to score over 25. What I love about Prize Picks, how quick and easy it is to make those picks. It takes me less than 60 seconds to set my lineup. Plus, their fast and secure withdrawals mean I get paid in as little as 15 minutes when I win. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Hey, what's up, guys? We are back on Locked On NBA Game Night. So we dipped a toe in the Boston Celtics polluted waters. I have to take a shot, New Yorker here. But let me make the case for Boston a little bit more. So I am taking these numbers from Shane Young, who's a friend and a fantastic NBA reporter over at Forbes. Great guy. He put out this graphic on the Boston Celtics that opened up my mind because I was kind of in the same headspace as you. Well, they just haven't been as good this year, and it's explainable, right? You have the title hangover. You're not as motivated. Like they were dramatically better as a home team last year. And yet after 54 games, their record is 4 games worse. They have 4 more 20-point victories than they did last year through 4, which is the most shocking part because last year they just felt so dominant. And this year you're like night to night. You're like, why is this team in a game with them? But it turns out the numbers do not actually back that notion up. Their offense is a point worse. Their defense is a little over a point better. Their net rating is actually better than that historic number they had at least through 54 games last year. They're plus 9.1. This year they're plus 9.4, shooting slightly worse on 2s. Slightly worse from 3. True shooting's a little down. Turnover percentage is better. They're actually best in the NBA in that statistic. Rebounding a little bit worse. But again, some of that is Kristaps Porzingis being out. One of the more interesting numbers I found in my deep dive is their starting lineup with Al Horford in it is plus 19 per 100 possessions this year. That is one of the more dominant, like large sample size lineups we've seen in the NBA. With KP, they're minus 3.5 per 100 possessions. And I'm curious to see, is that like some weird lingering chemistry issue? Or I think more likely them just reincorporating Kristaps Porzingis. I know we talked through it a little bit. I'm still betting on the talent. And the biggest thing for me, which based off what you just said, you disagree with, is I just don't see the team in the East that can beat them, where I kind of think Oklahoma City, even if there isn't a team as good as the Cavs, I kind of think the Nuggets might have a shot at the upset. But what do you think about that idea that there isn't a true competitor out East, which I will say is an extremely disrespectful statement about the Cleveland Cavaliers, who obviously have been the better team record-wise, rating-wise, and look like at least an incredible regular season team.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick up for Danny Cunningham here. Yeah. I think anyone that has the gall to somehow big up the Celtics last year and say, well, they've been dominant all year, what did you expect come playoff time? And then to subsequently bypass the Cleveland Cavaliers, because you're bringing up 9.2 this year. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 5.5 games clear in the standings, and they have a plus 10.4 net rating with the best offense in the NBA currently. They're one of the most efficient offenses in the NBA this year, and they lead the NBA in effective field goal percentage as a team. They're a great three-point shooting team. They will attack you. They have multiple ball handlers on that roster. Between the Celtics and between the Cavaliers, they got the best defender on the court in Evan Mobley. And arguably, Jaren Allen, I would put him right behind Evan Mobley and say he might be the second best defender between all of them, including over Tatum, Drew, and Derek White. So here's the issue. If people are saying they don't believe in them because their top-end talent is Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland as their primary scoring engines, then sure, say that. But if you're telling me that, like, you don't believe in them because you don't know if they have the pieces, you don't believe in the regular season, well, the regular season is saying they're one of the best teams we've seen in the last 25 years. That's what they started off 15-0 this year. Now, everything about the Cavaliers is going to be about how do you feel like they're going to be able to transfer their regular season offense to a half-court playoff setting when it matters most. The same questions the Celtics had. I don't even think, I'm going to be real with you, the Celtics, for me, you're bringing up the Thunder and Denver, and we'll bring up Denver in a little bit. I said last year the Celtics wouldn't have beat Denver in a series because they struggle with teams that are going to pound them consistently inside of the paint and have the ability to one-on-one them defensively and also space them out with good three-point shooters around an indomitable offensive option like Jokic is. And I think there's so many things about the Cavaliers that are great. And I would even argue, you tell me if I'm tripping, Gavin, they're starting five with DeAndre Hunter, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen might actually be better than what the Celtics are putting out in the court right now. It's just, do you believe the top-end shot making for the Cleveland Cavaliers, if that's going to sustain itself and be enough through an Eastern Conference playoff run?
Yeah, they've just shot. I think you nailed it because they've shot incredibly well this year and like outlier shooting. Like you look at like shooting relative to difficulty of shot, and they're so far ahead of everyone in the rest of the league. And I don't know if I buy that yet. I buy it with Donovan Mitchell. Like he is, like, by any metric, one of the best playoff scorers we've seen in the last 25 years. I think he's gotten crap for shrinking the moment. I've personally never really seen Donovan Mitchell shrink. Maybe I'm forgetting a series earlier in his career, but he's always stepped up. He's always scored the basketball well. It is more so I'm deeply, deeply curious if Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen holds up as a playoff lineup. And I've admitted my own bias as someone who covers the Knicks. Because
what are you worried about Evan Mobley for? Well, just what do you think Evan might struggle with? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So it is the 3 on volume and him being dared to take that shot is what I'm really curious, because he had December, he was over 50%. The 5 games in October, he was over 50%. Every other month this year, he's been a 30% shooter. I actually conveniently just talked to Danny Cunningham about that. And he noted there was like 2 lingering injuries those months that he thinks affected Evan's shot. And when he's been healthy, he's been shooting them on volume. He's been shooting them confidently. They've been going in. And to me, like it is maybe like an oversimplification to just say it boils down to that one area. But I think if he is taking and making threes, then I'm a major believer in this Cleveland team. Like the collective passing, shooting, like offensive IQ, what Atkinson has brought in terms of like the speed the ball moves around the court, and just the sophistication of that offense. And then to your point, what they bring defensively, like I'm a believer at that point. I just think Mobley needs to shoot well, and Darius Garland, who like he shrunk a little last playoffs. He shrunk 2 years ago against the New York Knicks. Like he needs to bring that. But just so we keep the draft format, I'm assuming based on this, Cleveland's your third pick.
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we covered the Cavs. So who would be your third pick?
Yeah, the Nuggets for me are the third pick.
Gotcha.
I think that behind, and I would even say it like this. Based on, we'll see how the rest of the year goes. I'm moving towards saying that if the Nuggets are healthy, I'll put them at 2 even over the Celtics. But I'm saying now, based on how the season started for the Nuggets are 21-5 in their last 26, I believe. They've been basically one of the 2 best teams in the NBA since the start of January 1st. I think that from this point on, it's going to say a lot about how the Western Conference is going to shape up. But I do think that the Celtics, given they won last year, given they played well for, I would say, a majority of the year this year, but the Nuggets are right on their heels. Like, the Nuggets are winning a lot of games. They're dominating teams. They're blowing teams out. Jokic hadn't had to play in the fourth quarter a lot as of late. But I also think this too, I think a lot comes down to Jamal Murray's health. I don't know if you paid attention to this, but Jamal Murray has been going wild for ever since basically like around December 1st. Since that point, since the turning of December 1st this season, Jamal Murray this year, he's averaging 22.2 points per game, 6.1 assists, almost 4 rebounds a game. And over that stretch, he's shooting 49, 40, 91 splits. And they're dominating without Russell Westbrook in the lineup, dominating with Aaron Gordon coming in and out of the lineup. And then Michael Porter Jr. having his best stretch of his career. He's playing better basketball than ever. So I think that a lot of the Nuggets things have been them getting everybody healthy, them getting locked into this new defensive scheme they have because they don't have KCP now. Now they got insert Christian Brown, who's having a career year. I think Christian Brown, arguably, if like all things were fair relative to like last year to this year's performance, he probably would be leading the MIP candidacy based on how he's played this year. They have so many options. And right now, Jokic is almost at cruise control with how good he's been because of how good the team's been around them.
Can you, because I'm a fan, I listen to Locked On Nuggets a decent amount, and at post trade deadline, you guys talked about the Nuggets failure or maybe just lack of flexibility in terms of upgrading on the margins and having to rely on guys like Peyton Watson, Julian Strother, like whoever you're going to play at backup center minutes. That are one-way players, or maybe at the center spot. No offense to my guy DJ. Zero-way players at this point in their career. How do they survive that, especially when Jokic isn't on the floor?
So that's the question, right? Like, do you believe in the Nuggets top 8? So they're starting 5 plus Russ, Julian Strother, and Peyton Watson, because that's what they did in their playoff rotation, obviously 2 years ago when they won the title. That's going to be the question. Is this year they'll be able to play well in the Jokic minutes, but now in the playoff setting, their rotation is going to look something like Jamal Murray with Russell Westbrook, with Michael Porter, with Aaron Gordon, and like Peyton Watson. And basically they're going to say, we're going to try to play as good a defense as possible. And Jamal Murray and Porter, you're basically have to lift us up with high-level shot making. Jamal Murray, by the way, again, has actually been doing that very well ever since he's gotten healthier as the year goes on. So they're going to throw out, I think, primary defensive lineups and see if they can just have 1 or 2 scores on the court that can kind of sustain that. But playoff time, DJ's not going to be playing. Zeke might play a little bit depending on the matchup. They're in foul trouble, that backup 4 position right there. But a lot of this is going to come down to like Christian Brown and the others on the roster. Can you continue to cut at a high level, to play defense at a high level, and that way you can make up for enough of the deficiency they have and allow for Murray, Jokic, and Porter to kind of carry offensively when it matters the most.
Yeah, look, I've been a long time MPJ fan, and I've kind of waited, like, when is the year where Jokic is off the floor, Murray's having an off game, and you can just look to him and say, like, hey, go get us a bucket. And I know maybe because of the back issues, like, he didn't become that guy that I always thought he was going to be, where it was like, he would get you 30 on those nights, but I know he's been playing some of his best basketball of late. So I'm excited to see it. I love the Nuggets. If I were to root for a team to come out of the West, it would be Denver. So I hope you're right about that, Swiper. But we still have a few more teams out east and one more out west to go over. We're going to get into it next on Locked On NBA Game Night. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Intuit TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who could do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find your every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On NBA Game Night, where we are drafting contenders. So just to review, you took the Thunder first. I took the Celtics second. You surprised me. You took your Denver Nuggets third. I am not going to go the same way. I will shout out one more time the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't know, Swipe, if you had any closing points on them, but they would be my clear-cut fourth team. As much as Cavs fans have in the comments been like Knicks guy, he's biased, I do think Cleveland has clearly been, despite that playoff series 2 years ago, the better team than the New York Knicks. And the most important thing is they, unlike the Celtics, have the easiest path of any of these teams to the conference finals, at least. Like, I not that it should be a cakewalk. Like, you play the Bucks, Giannis is obviously going to be by a fairly substantial margin the best player in that series, or at least he should be. Maybe Donovan Mitchell equals him, but like they could run into a tough team. I think they have far and away the path of least resistance. And I want to note, for all my doubts about Allen and Mobley, they are plus 15 points per 100 possessions this season with those two on the floor. A 97th percentile lineup. The offense is 97th percentile on the season. The defense is the one that's only been very good, 85th percentile. So it's worked well in the regular season. I think DeAndre Hunter was key for them. It means teams like the Knicks don't really have a hiding spot for someone like Jalen Brunson. The Bucks don't have a hiding spot for someone like Damian Lillard. I am really, really confident in this team's ability to, at the very least, make the conference finals.
Yeah, so the clear top four for me are going to be, like I said, OKC, Boston, Nuggets, Cleveland.
Yep.
I'm pretty comfortable locking in that way. Fifth team, you ready?
I'm taking the New York Knicks. And that is, it feels like a stretch for me in the sense that I think they are clearly the fifth strongest team in the NBA. And at the same time, I don't really give them a shot at beating Boston in the second round, which would inherently mean they are not very good contenders. So maybe I should have, I don't want to spoil it. Maybe I should have just taken my fifth team, but I'm going to do this based off the idea. I think the Knicks in a vacuum are the fifth best team in the NBA. My biggest hesitation with them, and I think I mentioned this stat last time on Locked On NBA Game Night, their starting lineup has played, I believe the number is 806 minutes. That is nearly 300 minutes more than any other lineup in the NBA. There are only 4 lineups in the entire league that have played half as many minutes. And in that extremely large sample size, they only have a plus 5.4 net rating, which is 54th percentile for any lineup.
4.94 on
it's even lower. All right. Yeah. I think I was using Clean the Glass, which I think takes out garbage time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Anyways, that is a large sample size of them being like an average team when their starters are in, and they dominate games sometimes, like when they find the right magic in their bench unit. But given how Tom Thibodeau leans the minutes in the regular season, will lean even more into those minutes in the playoffs. I think unless the Knicks are willing to make a shift and maybe put Deuce McBride in their starting lineup, I don't see them as playoff risers. Like, I just think we've seen enough to know that that's not a championship lineup. But am I too low on my own team, Swipa?
Well, I think the Mitchell Robinson equation is going to be the question. Is when does he come back? Mm-hmm. How healthy is he when he comes back? Is he able to play himself into shape when he comes back? And so, because Mitchell Robinson, what people don't remember 2 years ago, he was the best pick and roll defensive big in the playoffs in 23 prior to getting out. So prior to them getting out in the second round by the Heat, he was playing extremely good defensive basketball. You add Mitchell Robinson to this team, I think we're having a little bit different conversation, because now you can run lineups with Jalen and Kat, Jalen and Mitch, and now Josh Hart and Mitch, Mikal and Mitch. And then you can just even offset some of the things Kat doesn't do well, which is the rim protection, really just anything in the vicinity of the paint at all, that rim deterrent. That's what Mitchell does. And he's also another very good rebounder you can add on your roster, who's also can be a switch 5 versus certain matchups, at least competent enough to make it viable. I love Mitchell Robinson. So if you get him back, I think that changes the dynamic of your team, because I think Jalen Brunson can walk into a series versus Donovan Mitchell and say, I'm better than you and be better. I think he can go into a series versus Jayson Tatum and say, I'm better than you and be better. Now, Jalen can do that because he's one of the best shot makers and shot creators in the sport, either at the rim, mid-range, or 3. He's made of the right stuff. I love Josh Hart. I think Josh Hart's going to have another tremendous playoff run. But now, Karl-Anthony Towns, when he is right, he's really hard to stop. But Kat, when he gets in pressure moments, sometimes he can fold like a picnic table. But it's just a matter of, can you get him feeling confident in his game? I think the Knicks are a little bit better than you're giving them credit for, but I do think they probably, of the 5 teams, have the lowest defensive ceiling. But I think they also, with OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and Mikal, they ostensibly should be able to be a pretty good two-way team. Karl-Anthony Towns is just going to have to play a lot better defense when it matters the most, though, as the lead anchor.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I'm a Mitch super fan. He's been doing this as long as I've been doing the podcast. I think my concern there is the spacing. If you are going to that double big lineup, and to your point, at a minimum, he makes your bench units dramatically better. Even last season, he was so good, like honestly shutting down Joel Embiid before Embiid decided to grab him by the ankle and knock him out of the playoffs. Thanks, Joel. But he's an exceptional defensive player, best offensive rebounder in basketball. I'm concerned because teams like the Celtics, even when Kat is out there as a 5, have made the Knicks feel claustrophobic by just switching that Brunson Kat pick and roll, sending a double off of whoever's guarding Josh Hart, and kind of just cutting the oxygen out of the Knicks offense. I think with Mitch, even though it's offset a little by the fact that he is such a great offensive rebounder, that is my number one concern with that setup. I think the defense could potentially be fantastic with that setup, but it comes down to Cat being able to hit deep threes, being able to attack smaller guys off the dribble. And then to your point, like, I'm with you. I think Brunson could be better than Tatum in a series. I just think the degree of difficulty for Brunson is so much higher than Tatum because he's having to beat two of the best screen navigators in basketball, and Drew Holiday and Derek White, two guys who are just amazing at those rear side contests. Jayson Tatum and Jalen Brown in switches, and then Kristaps Porzingis, who's still a fantastic rim protector, versus Tatum, who just decimates Cat in drop. They played the Celtics twice this year. They've lost by a combined 56 points. I'm not optimistic. I'm happy you are. Let's finish this up real quick. Who is your fifth and final pick?
So my sixth pick for this,
I'm losing track.
Is the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't want Memphis fans, because I thought about them. I arguably would have them at 5, just because I think that, like, I do, and then that means the Knicks would be 6. But that sounds crazy to me because I love both those teams. Jaren Jackson Jr. is having an underrated year. He's going to make All-NBA more than likely this year. He's going to finish at least top 3 in DPOY this year as well, and first team all defense, obviously. Jalen Wells, like GG, that's why people are so reticent, because they're so young in some other parts. And then Ja Morant's not having a prototypical Ja Morant year. Lower shooting efficiency. He's a good passer. He's not finishing quite as well or shooting quite as well, but he's still a very good player. And then on top of that, Desmond Bane not having like an exceptional year in many ways. So people are lower on the team, even though they're performing very well offensively and they're a very good defensive team. Typically, those things mean for people that are a contender, but I think people don't believe in their top end talent and top end shot making in a playoff setting. But I think Memphis is another team. That's my 6 teams that I would say are true contenders in the league, and then there are gaps between them. Are going to be OKC, Celtics, Denver, Cavs, Knicks, Memphis.
I hear you, and again, I think this is interesting because it's just two different philosophies where I lean more into the stars, into the shot making, and I just don't think Ja Morant has been that guy this season, and in ways Memphis has intentionally gone away from him. I mean, they run less pick and roll than any team in the NBA. I think I think something like 40%, maybe I'm making these numbers up, but this is what I saw today. Something like 40% of his possessions in the past were pick and roll. This year it's like 25%. Like, they've almost like divested with him, and it's allowed Jaren Jackson Jr. to blossom. And they've been so incredibly good despite some of the worst injury luck in the NBA. I love Vince Williams. I'm glad he's back in the mix. I don't know. I don't see them like in a series, like if it's two guys going mano a mano, I just don't see.
To confirm your point, by the way, they run 10.6 pick and roll possessions per game in the NBA, which is obviously the least, and they have the least amount of points per game, just 8.5 in pick and roll. And they're also not super efficient at it either. They're like bottom 2 in the league in point and pick and roll efficiency as well. So just not a modern offense in many, many ways.
No. So I don't know. I flowers to JJJ. He's been amazing, but I'm not a believer. I am going to take it's a knife in my stomach to say this out loud, but the Los Angeles Lakers are my 6th team. 10-2 in their last 12 games, 12.7 net rating. That is tied with Oklahoma City for the best in that stretch. It feels like getting Luka has like awoken something in Bron, who I think had accepted in his head, like, it's just not going to happen for me. I got to play with my son. I have my 4 rings. That's enough. I'm going to 2 more years, ride off into the sunset. And I think that drive is back now. Like, oh, wait, we can do this. And we've seen Luka just consistently, which is why Dallas, you probably shouldn't have traded the guy, rip teams' hearts out, like killed the Suns, killed the Clippers. Like, last year, like murdered the Timberwolves. I know I'm getting violent here, but like he is a playoff killer, a serial killer. Like, and I think it's just hard unless a team like Oklahoma City's maybe the one team I'd put in this category. I think Denver's close. Unless a team is just so much better, I think his potential to just step into a series and win it almost single-handedly is there. Plus the fact that even without him, and even like post Anthony Davis, like the Lakers have turned it around defensively. Austin Reeves is playing the best basketball of his life. I can't say I believe in them just because they didn't get to make that trade deadline move for a center. And I think both obviously Denver and Oklahoma City can really pick on that and maybe just brutalize them on the boards. But man, those two together, 2 of the 7 or so smartest offensive engines in NBA history. I think it's hard to bet against that.
Yeah, everything I hear about the Lakers, which I think they could get there. So no shade. it's all probability, like it's all hypothetical
Yep.
about what
Sure.
they could be, which is fair. I've heard Jason Tim talk a lot about their small ball lineup, and that's what they're going to go to in the playoffs. And I'm just like, okay, well, I think some teams can take advantage of that in some very real ways. I think, hiding a big on Rui is a very real thing. We've seen it happen in back-to-back playoff runs, i.e. Jokic on Rui. But I do think that like the Lakers are going to have really high top-end shot making. But I cannot think of a team, Gavin, in recent years that did not have a starting level center, and I called them a contender. I legitimately can't think of the team that would qualify for it. But this could be perhaps the first iteration that could do that.
We'll see. It helps to have LeBron and Luka. He's Swipa. I'm Gavin. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On NBA Game Night.